Just in, Nike has suspended its partnership with NBA star Kyrie Irving. The former Cavs, now Brooklyn Nets member, was suspended for 5 games.
How shoe deals control NBA careers. By the time an NBA player signs his first professional contract, Nike, Adidas, or Under Armour has already been invested in him for 6 years. Maybe longer. Not watching. Invested. Money spent. Infrastructure built. People paid. The relationship between that player and that brand didn't start at the press conference. It started in a high school gymnasium in Atlanta or Los Angeles or Chicago when he was 14 years old and somebody handed him a pair of free shoes. That's the part fans never see, and it explains almost everything about how shoe companies actually operate in this league. This isn't a story about endorsement deals, it's a story about control. Systemic, deliberate, start them young control that runs from the AAU circuit all the way to a player's signature line. The NBA exists somewhere in the middle of that pipeline, not at the beginning of it. Today we're exposing the full chain, how it starts, how it scales, and why the player at the center of it has far less power than anyone watching from the outside would ever guess. Let's start before the draft, before college, because that's where the real decisions get made. Part 1. The AAU Pipeline. Nike funds the Nike Elite Youth Basketball League. Adidas runs the 3 SSB circuit. These are not charity programs. They are scouting and brand imprinting operations disguised as travel basketball leagues, and they have been running exactly this way for over 2 decades. A brand identifies a promising 13 or 14-year-old through its grassroots network. It funds or sponsors an AAU team that player ends up on. That team gets gear, funding, and access to elite tournaments with college scouts in attendance. The player gets exposure he couldn't get any other way. The brand gets years of loyalty built into a kid before he's old enough to drive. Recruiting analyst Bob Gibbons spent decades tracking how brand affiliation at the AAU level correlated where players landed in college, which mattered because college programs have their own shoe deals. A Nike-affiliated AAU player joining a Nike college program was not always a coincidence. The infrastructure was deliberately designed to make that path the easiest one to follow.
There's a reaper. And every 4 years, your time runs out. You might forget your debts.
Kevin Durant was affiliated with Nike-sponsored grassroots programs before he ever stepped on a college court. His rookie shoe deal with Nike was reportedly $60 million over 7 years. That deal didn't emerge from nowhere. It was the end of a relationship that had been cultivated for years before his name was ever called on a draft night. The pipeline gets him young. College is where brands consolidate that investment. And the money moving at that level would surprise most people watching from the outside. Part 2. College programs and the shoe ecosystem. Every major college basketball program has a shoe deal. Duke is Nike, Kentucky is Nike, Kansas is Adidas. These contracts pay universities tens of millions over multi-year terms in exchange for outfitting entire athletic departments and placing brand logos on every uniform that appears on national television. The FBI investigation into college basketball corruption between 2017 and 2019 pulled the curtain back on how this works in practice. Adidas executive James Gatto pleaded guilty to funneling payments to families of top recruits to steer them toward Adidas-sponsored schools. The goal was explicit: land players at Adidas programs so those players would eventually turn professional as Adidas athletes. The pipeline from AAU to college to the pros wasn't just a cultural tendency. In documented cases, it was being actively managed with cash.
Here with Christian Dawkins, former NBA agent, represented players such as Fred VanVleet, Toronto Raptors NBA championship guard, who was the centerpiece of the FBI corruption case that went into college basketball.
Agent Christian Dawkins, caught in the same probe, described a system where brands, agents, and coaches coordinated around the same players years before those players were draft eligible. Each party had a stake in the eventual professional deal. The player was the asset being managed. Nobody in those conversations was thinking first about what was best for him. By draft night, the brand relationship is already years old. Most people assume this is where the player finally gets power. He doesn't. Part 3. The draft, the deal, the machine. Shoe brands have been in contact with the player's representation months before the draft. They know his game, his marketability, his projected draft position, and his off-court personality. The negotiation that looks like it begins at signing has a long history behind it that the player is rarely fully aware of. Once a deal is signed, marketing obligations start immediately. Signature shoe timelines are set by the brand, not the player. A player told he's getting a signature in year 2 attends design meetings during the regular season and flies to brand headquarters in the offseason for campaign presentations. He shoots content before the launch. All of it falls under appearance clauses already in the contract. None of it is separately compensated. The brand controls the release entirely. Production volume, retail partners, price point, colorways, drop timing. A shoe and boutique distribution stays exclusive and culturally relevant. A shoe in mass retail moves more units, but loses the hype around it. The player has almost no contractual say in which direction the brand goes. If the line underperforms because the brand underinvested in the rollout, the player absorbs the consequence, while the brand absorbs nothing.
Don't be afraid of rejection. It's the greatest teacher of all time.
LeBron's Nike deal, restructured in 2015 into a lifetime arrangement reportedly worth $1 billion, includes creative input and a royalty structure that standard shoe contracts never offer. It took him becoming the most commercially valuable player on earth to get those terms. Nobody negotiates that on a rookie deal. The leverage gap between where these brand relationships start and where LeBron ended up is essentially the entire story of how shoe power works in this league. The marketing machine is visible to anyone paying attention. What's harder to see is how brand affiliation shapes decisions players make throughout their entire career, often without them realizing it. Part 4. How brand control shows up in their career. Shoe brand tours are written into contracts as appearance obligations. Nike basketball tours through China, Europe, and Africa happen because players under contract are contractually expected to participate. A player coming off a full 82-game season and a playoff run can be told he's flying to Shanghai for a week of clinics and content creation. That is not a request. That's a contract. The China market has shaped how brands price NBA player deals for 15 years. A player with strong Chinese market appeal commands higher brand value regardless of his statistics. That's part of why players with style and international recognition sometimes land better shoe deals than better basketball players who don't market as easily beyond American borders. Brands are pricing global commercial potential, not points per game.
Where he meticulously crafted art pieces for those who seek a higher purpose. He continues to stand, 11 strong, heart open, a champion of the people.
Kyrie Irving's move from Nike to Anta after his deal expired in 2021 illustrated how complicated a brand transition actually is. His signature line had genuine cultural traction. Switching to a Chinese brand meant rebuilding the entire marketing apparatus around different priorities, different distribution, and a different audience. The basketball didn't change. Everything surrounding it did. Brand loyalty also shapes the professional network around a player. Trainers, advisors, and agents who are connected to the same brand create an ecosystem that's comfortable to stay inside. Disrupting the brand relationship means disrupting relationships with people who aren't the brand. That friction keeps players inside brand ecosystems longer than a purely financial analysis would suggest. The real argument: funding AAU teams, sponsoring college programs, signing players early. None of that is illegal. The FBI case showed where the line was. Paying families directly crossed it and people went to prison. But the broader system, the one that starts with free gear at 13 and ends with a contractual obligation to tour Asia, is entirely legal. What it produces is a player who has been inside a brand relationship for a decade before he has the experience or leverage to negotiate it on anything close to equal terms. The AAU coach had a brand affiliation. The college program had a shoe deal. The agent may have existing relationships with the brand's marketing executives. Every layer of the player's development has been touched by shoe company money before the player sees any of it himself. The brands aren't villains for building this. They're businesses that are exceptionally good at what they do. The question we're sitting with is whether the players inside the system understand what they're inside until it's already too late to change the terms. The next time a shoe deal gets announced, the headline number is not the story. The story is how long that relationship has been building and who held the power in it at every stage. From a 14-year-old in a gym getting his first pair of free sneakers to a press conference with a check that has a lot of zeros on it. The shoe company was there the whole time. The player just didn't always know what that presence was costing him. Here's what I want in the comments. Do you think the AAU pipeline is the brands investing in basketball or the brands investing in control? Because how you answer that changes everything about how you see this sport. Drop your take below. And if there's a specific player you think this system shaped more than anything else in his career, name him. I'm reading every comment.